Yeah.
OBS says we're going, and I think YouTube says we're going. So I think we're going. Hopefully we'll see people show up in the chat, but right now it looks like we got we got more people than usual in the voice chat. We got Chris, Pikachu, and Daniel, and there's Pierre in the chat. How you doing, Pierre? And how are you guys doing? Oh, now you clam up. We've been talking for 15 minutes and you guys wouldn't shut up.
We can barely hear you, Pikachu.
Oh, Pikachu was trying to talk? Yeah, Pikachu is not coming through.
We were just discussing Fraud Howard.
See, I don't know who Todd Howard is, so you have me at a disadvantage there. Hello, SKM. Well, anyway, let's get started. Chris, I think the first thing you wanted to talk about was Pepe Le Pew. See, you guys are claiming up again.
Chris?
Chris, Earth to Chris. Boy, the one time he doesn't talk.
Sorry, I missed you. My mom called me. What were you laughing at,
okay.
Daniel?
Well, no, because
oh yeah,
I was asking about Pepe Le Pew, and and you disappeared on us.
Apparently, he promotes rope culture. You know what's pretty funny is that everyone's saying Pepe Le Pew promotes rope culture, but nobody cares about Fifi LaFume from Tiny Toons or the Kanker sisters from Ed, Ed, and Eddie, even though they behave the exact same way. More aggressively, I'd say.
Double standards. Yeah. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
Well, and you were talking a little bit about this last time, how the inspiration for Pepe Le Pew, for Chuck Jones creating the character, which was one of the writers for Looney Tunes. Most of the Looney Tunes cartoons were written by one or both of two guys, Ted Pierce and Michael Maltese, and this is Ted Pierce. And apparently he really saw himself as a ladies' man. And he was also kind of a party animal. And so basically as soon as he left Termite Terrace, every workday, he'd go partying all night, and then crash, wake up, realize, oh, I gotta go to work right now. And would just go to work, not having time to go home and shower or anything. So, by the end of the week, he looks like death warmed over. Stinks to high heaven, is completely non-cognizant of that, or uncognizant, whatever the word is, not cognizant of it, and yet he'd go and try and pick up some of the girls in ink and paint. So that was the inspiration for Pepe Le Pew.
Yeah.
Now, the first one was written by the other writer I mentioned, Mike Maltese. Oh, go ahead.
In the original cartoon, wasn't it the cat who was in ink and paint?
Yeah. I forgot her name, but yeah. I think her name was Penelope.
Usually they have it as Penelope.
Yeah. Yeah, she's just an ordinary cat, but then an incident occurs, so she gets splashed with paint, and from a distance she looks like
well, it's a white stripe. She's a black cat, and a white stripe gets painted down her back, and so Pepe thinks she's a skunk.
Yeah. There actually were a couple of Pepe Le Pew skits where the tables got churned, where Penelope, for whatever reason, becomes attracted to Pepe, and she's so aggressive, and he's like, Madame, we just met, Madame, control yourself.
Well, he had gotten covered in, I think, blue paint, and apparently she finds that attractive. She had just had some weird sort of mishap with water and a whole bunch of crud and stuff. And so she was looking pretty cruddy. And so, yeah, they turned the tables on that one. But okay, Mike Maltese was inspired, and I'm having to look this up. Charles Boyer's character in the movie Algiers is Pepe Le Moco, and that's where Pepe Le Pew comes from. And he has this, romance with Hedy Lamarr, and it's one of those movies where, all the women go to their husbands, well, why can't you be more like him? And Maltese was thinking, you know what? If a guy actually did behave that way towards them in real life, they wouldn't like it. And so that was his inspiration. And the voice, Mel Blanc based the voice off of Charles Boyer.
Yeah.
Yes. So so the point actually was that they wouldn't like it. Huh.
Yeah.
Well,
that was the whole point. He wouldn't have much success.
And that's another thing, too, that people often ignore in those classical cartoons. Many of them, always say that, oh, I like cartoons like Bugs Bunny and Tom and Jerry. They were my heroes. It's like, well, when you look back, Bugs Bunny wasn't always the hero.
And Jerry was just a plain asshole.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
a lot of them were jerks. Foghorn Leghorn was a complete asshole.
Yeah.
Some of them behave like that in real life. Yeah.
I go as.
If I recall correctly, it wasn't Foghorn Leghorn. Wasn't he invented as, like a stereotype of a lot of those, cliche Southern gentlemen that act like, oh yeah, we made some mistakes in the past, but I'll tell you, the South has a pride that you Northerners just don't have, like that,
It's the kind of person who will, greet you with a pat on the back, but without realizing it, he'd pat you so hard he'd actually hurt you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I go as far as to call Foghorn a cock.
That too. Yeah.
All right, yeah. So SKM, Gavin Newsom is saying that Cali will fully open up in June. Oh, I'm sure the recall has nothing to do with that, right?
Totally not. As someone who lives here, I'm totally not. Totally not suspicious.
Some of those politicians are just in total denial. Joe Biden and all that. They're acting like they're in total denial. They're like, oh yeah, the American public loves me. Meanwhile, outside there's a bunch of people screaming and yelling that they hate him. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and another one from SKM, classic Looney Tunes. Yoinks and away! Crash. Yoinks in the way! Crash! Yoinks in the way! Crash!
Speaking of Warner Brothers and all that, apparently the new Animaniacs remake, they tried to take on gun control, and it was just as cringy as OKKO.
Oh, I just finished watching Mr. Enter's latest thing on propaganda cartoons.
PSAs, and he covered that. Yeah, I haven't seen the full one, just the clips from Mr. Enter, but apparently their solution was, oh, just do what Australia did.
But I thought they didn't want to do gun confiscations.
Well, it's not.
Andy Davis mentions the Afghanistan withdrawal by 9/11, which would be the 20th anniversary of the attacks. So,
wow.
As if that's gonna happen, the withdrawal by then. As if.
Yeah. I know why Biden wants to withdraw from Afghanistan, because he wants to station all the U.S. troops around the White House so he can protect himself.
Yeah.
WB
are axing Snyder. I don't know who Snyder is.
Yeah.
Zack Snyder.
And that is,
or he wants to go to war with Russia. Yeah, no wait. I actually saw, a parody of that, where it's like, what if Hillary Clinton went and she's ranting and raving about Russia and how we have to stand up to Russia, and it ends up with a global war that ends up with Washington D.C. destroyed, and she's covered in ash, and her age is like, Miss Clinton, what did you think was going to happen going to war with Russia?
I think it would have been an even better punchline if it was someone like, aren't you glad we didn't elect Trump?
Yeah.
How you doing, Pip?
Hello. Still a bit
Hey.
Pip is very quiet.
Hello, Pip.
And I'm going to see if I can turn him up.
Hello,
Let me turn you up from my end. All right, try it again.
Hello.
Oh, yeah, I think that's better. Yeah.
Yep. There's our bird-loving Australian brony. Yeah, that's a fun fact you don't know about Pip. He doesn't like cats or dogs. He's a bird guy.
Hey, Pip.
I like hound dogs.
Pip,
I just don't. I like large dogs. I don't like small dogs. Small dogs seem to just have to compensate for being small by being completely and utterly obnoxious.
Yeah.
Hey, Pip, did you ever, do you prefer birds or horses?
Birds.
Ah.
I have ridden horses.
Yeah.
Have you
I
ridden
did
birds?
ride a horse. I did ride a horse for the first time last year at my aunt's place, and let me tell you that my butt was sore for a couple days,
I'm still trying
and
to.
my leg.
I'm still trying to return a dove I bought from the pet store.
And unless you've grown up around horses and actually ride them regularly, no. It's not fun.
It'd be a lot easier to return a carrier pigeon.
This
Aren't
parrot
carrier
is.
pigeons? Aren't carrier pigeons extinct though?
I don't think all of them are. I think a few species are, but I think there's still some around.
This parrot
There's
is
a whole bunch
dead.
of different ones.
This parrot is dead. He is deceased. He has ceased to be. He has
He's
shuffled off
not
of this
dead.
mortal
He's
coil.
pining for the fields.
Yeah. He's not dead. He's just sleeping. Fun fact: fish actually do sleep, but they don't go belly up. That means they're dead.
Don't they kind of float in the middle of the bowl?
Yeah, the way you can tell if your fish is sleeping is simple. Just look at them, and if they just like seem like they're floating there and they're not aware, that means they're sleeping. Like their eyes are still open, but yeah.
Or some
If
of them
they're
will
belly
rest
up-
on the bottom.
Yeah. Yeah, if they're belly up and if they're just belly up, you gotta have the other talk with your kid.
I kind of wonder how do sharks sleep.
They rest on the bottom.
Yeah.
It depends what species of shark it is, because some sharks have to keep moving in order to keep water flowing over their gills. So, like most of their
but
brain
they-
functions will shut
no,
down.
no,
They'll just keep going in a
rest
straight
on-
line.
They rest on the bottom facing the current. And so the current moves into their gills.
Huh.
You know, Shane, speaking of, that joke I just made earlier, it reminds me of this thing I saw a comedian say one time. He says, you know what's really kind of funny? It's like people is that it's much easier to talk to your children about death, but it's difficult to talk to your children about how you create life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like, Mommy, how come Grandpa's not coming back? Well, because Grandpa had a heart attack, you see, and when you die, your body doesn't work, your mind doesn't work, so it's really sad. Oh, where do babies come from? Well, you see,
Mommy and a daddy love each other very much. They got in bed and put their crotches together until it looks like rhubarb.
yeah,
The stork brings them.
yeah.
Mommy or
Yeah,
daddy have one
yeah.
wine.
Well, you see, when a mommy and daddy love each other very much, well,
They have
sometimes they don't
one.
sometimes they don't love each other, but they pretend to because they want to get some action.
See,
They use protection.
when a mommy and a daddy meet in a bar and have had a few too many.
Yep.
Are you confessing how you and Heather met?
No, we don't. And we met online, so that's
Yeah. You don't drink, don't smoke. What do you do?
not going there.
Well, your mother and I did something called an angry dragon. It involves paprika.
Yeah. Yeah. And then after mommy and daddy spent their romantic night together, daddy noticed that something was broken, and mommy said, "You asshole, you didn't check for tears or anything?"
And then the daddy goes out for pizza, and the mommy never sees him again.
That reminds me of an idea I had for a Got Milk commercial.
Yeah.
You see a kid, and he looks at and she looks at her mom and she's like, "Where's Daddy?" And then the mom looks like she's about to cry. Cut to got milk.
What?
SKM is saying the
this
stork
got
is not a great
dark.
metaphor. Yeah, the stork never made sense to me. I always thought a pelican would make more sense
Yeah.
because
I
they got the room in there.
I actually saw a joke like that where like some kids were talking about that, and it's like my mom said that babies come from storks, and the other two kids are like, that's impossible. A stork wouldn't be able to hold an average sized baby. Maybe a
Wait.
pelican. A
Wait,
pelican would make.
Well, African or European stork?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it was kind of like that. You know, they start. You know, it starts out about where do babies come from, but then it evolves into they start talking about which kind of bird can actually lift, and you know they're like that. It's like, well, I mean, an albatross could lift a human baby. Oh yeah, but albatrosses don't usually come close to shore. Or sure, they spend almost all their time out in open air. Oh, that is true.
Yeah, but every time the cartoons depict a stork, you know, the stork has the baby, you know, like tied up in this blanket or something like that. A pelican wouldn't need the blanket.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, what would you tell your kid if they're adopted and they ask that question? Well, your father went out hunting one time during stork season.
Yeah.
The Yoshi Island story.
It's like,
The
so
version of it.
you adopted me. Where do babies come from? Well, in your case, when a mommy and daddy love each other very much, they spend the night together. But then the daddy regrets his decision and leaves to get cigarettes. Mommy never sees him again. She has you, and then she goes insane, and the state declares that you're unsafe there.
I'm getting music from somewhere.
That was my phone, sorry.
Oh, yeah. And I think we're getting clicks from Daniel.
Oh, I'm not touching anything.
I don't know what it is. All right, SKM is asking about Biden's appointment of David Chipman as head of the ATF. Pretty much the guy who, I don't know if he single-handedly screwed up Waco, but yeah, he was one of the big ones.
A couple of people claiming he was one of the people who posed in front of the ashes. They're comparing photographs and such.
Yeah, and like there was the one guy who kept saying like, well, no, let's try and talk to them. Let's try and see if we can get a peaceful. And they ended up sending him away. And I think it was Chipman, he had said, who called him up and say, hey, you want to see the compound burn to the ground?
If he's that incompetent, he must be related to Bob.
Do you think people are judging the FBI too
It's
harshly?
like-
Do you think every agent should be scorned? Well, I mean,
I didn't know there was a guy that tried to persuade tried to get them to stop sieging the compound and try and encourage the Branch Davidians to come out and talk. That guy's all right, but he got sent away, which kind of puts holes in we just need the right people in office. It's like, the right people tend to get fired.
Mm-hmm. He did say on Reddit a year ago that because many people who apply for guns and fail background checks commit crimes later, he wanted to use that to arrest. Oh, he wants pre-crime. So applying for a gun is evidence that you're going to commit a crime, I guess.
I'm back, sorry. My mom needed me.
He's one of those people that has no business being a government agent, let alone being the head of anything.
I don't think he should be put in charge of a paper bag.
David Chapman? Yeah, that guy. Yeah.
Chapman,
Chapman. Chapman.
Yeah, apparently he was one of the guys, that said, that was told flooding all that tear gas into into
the kind of
Waco was a
person
good idea.
Yeah, he's the kind of person I wouldn't trust to pack my shopping.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, by the time Waco had happened, it had already happened several other times that they had had a standoff, used tear gas, and the result was an inferno. And they knew that at the time.
And by the way, people are still insistent that it's like, oh no, there's actual audio recording of David Koresh telling his followers to burn the place on fire. Yet all it is mumbled, and the only reason it says so is because they put subtitles there.
Yep, the
and
priming.
What?
It's called priming, that like the thing they do on Ghost Hunters.
Yeah,
where you pick up a wayward signal and it goes. But since they put the words on the screen, your brain kind of makes the match.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why. Yeah, I mean you have a really, really old video about pareidolia, and you pointed that out.
Yeah, there's a thing that was actually going on at the Chauvin trial about that, because apparently one of the things that some of the witnesses or whoever are trying to say is that they were playing like the video, and at one point, supposedly, George Floyd says, "I ate too many drugs," and other people are saying, no, he's saying, "I ain't do any drugs," which was the kind of grammar he used. So, I mean, it all depends on how your brain is primed. Are you primed to think that, which side are you primed for? If you're primed to be on Chauvin's side, you're going to hear, "I ate too many drugs." If you're primed to be on Floyd's side, you're going to hear, "I ain't do any drugs."
Kind of reminds me.
And I ain't afraid of no ghosts.
Kind of reminds me
the
of
pareidolia episode, yeah.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of Trayvon Martin, because everyone was like, "Oh no, George Zimmerman was being aggressive," because if you listen on the audio, you hear Trayvon Martin cry, "Please stop, leave me alone." But here's the thing: Trayvon Martin's own parents listened to it and they said, "Yeah, that's not our son. That's someone else."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and there was that one time where they where they tried to claim, I think this was Mother Jones that did this, when they deceptively edited the 911 call.
Oh yeah, it's like, here's the actual recording of 911. "I see a kid, he's up to no good, he looks black," when it's actually saying, "Look, there's a kid, he's acting suspicious, I'm going to contact him just to make sure he's," like, I don't remember the exact words, but he's acting suspiciously, I'm going to make sure he's up to no good. And the dispatcher's like, "Well, what does he look like? Is he black, Latino, white?" He looks black.
He actually said, "I don't know, he looks black," is what he said.
Yeah.
But I was talking about the other part where he apparently said, effing and a C word that's, that's a racial epithet. That's also a small animal that looks like it's wearing a mask. But you had multiple people, including CNN, Wolf Blitzer sat down with his audio guy, and multiple people did this independently, and they brought out the audio, and what he actually said was, "It's fucking cold." Not the other C word.
Yeah.
And according to SKM, New York Times is in financial trouble and may start laying off journalists soon. I haven't heard that.
Yep.
I guess writing articles against Trump is not a viable business model anymore.
Yeah. Well, I know Disney's in shambles.
Yeah. Oh, thank God you brought that up. It's just.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, it's not even Star Wars. It's Marvel, everything, and it's like, it's like they're all acting like it's like, "I don't get it. Why isn't it there?" And everyone's like, maybe because you alienated your audience when you're telling your own audiences that, yeah, you're white male chauvinists, and you need to be lectured. People are going to be like, "Yeah, screw this."
Well, and if they hadn't spent $15 million per episode on The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
It's popular,
Yeah, and also, well, yeah, that's another thing too. It's like, the reason why these movies aren't succeeding, even though, we hear them breaking box office records, is because they're so freaking expensive. It's like,
And
we're
from
gonna
what
make
I
this movie.
understand, it's gotten to the point where it's not special effects that are doing it, because effects are getting cheaper and all the other stuff, the digital platforms making everything cheaper. It's the fact that movies now have 27 producers and they're all getting paid top dollar, and most of them don't really do anything.
Oh yeah.
I'd imagine most of them are there for diversity reasons.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
No, I
It's
think
like
it's just a cash grab.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like you hear so many stories of it's like, they're trying to diversify and they're like, it's like, so we hired this woman to be the head of this department. And I'm like, okay, what does she do? She's the head of this department. What does that department do? Well, she's the head of this department. What does it do?
He's the head of diversity.
Yeah. It's like, because if anything, that's actually an insult to women, because women don't just want to be getting paid; they want to be doing something. And if you're just gonna say, "Okay, we're gonna give you this high-paying job to do nothing," it's like that's not being diverse. That's being pity. That's being.
I mean,
pitiful.
Hollywood accounting has always been like the worst. I'm amazed that the SEC hasn't done anything, except they've probably lobbied the hell out of them. But it's like, you hear that these movies, and they're breaking like, box office records and they made $300 million. Oh, but they lost money. That's pretty much always been the case, because when they make money, they have to pay royalties to the actors, and they try everything to prevent that. But the actors get a percentage of the net, which is what they make after expenses. The producers get paid a percentage of gross, meaning everything that comes in. So yeah, it's the producers that are making bank.
If I recall correctly, that's actually why a lot of independent films in the early days, would often deliberately, limit how many people see their film, and so that way on paper it looks like it made a loss, but the reason why they did that is because if the film flops, they get to keep all the revenue, whereas if it was a big financial success, they got to give it all to the producer.
Yeah, it's basically the plot of The Producers. That's a lot closer to reality.
I saw the video.
That's not
of the
fiction. That's almost a documentary.
Yeah.
You can make more money with a flop than with a hit, because with a hit you have to pay off the backers.
Yep. Fun fact. That's also why stuff at the why popcorn at the movies is so freaking expensive. The reason why they do it is because the producers, are telling movie theaters, "Oh yeah, you don't get the profits of ticket sales. We get all that.
Right, so they can only make money off of the
I think it's usually like around half, and then for like big ones like Disney, it's the whole thing. Like there's a reason why like it's just like nuts, really. Like those I mean, I usually just try like buy like a popcorn or drink just so that at least they get a little bit of money, but damn.
I remember when you could get into the theater all day for a nickel.
Yeah. Actually, there reminds me.
And you got
really
two movies and a couple of shorts and a cartoon, and yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
They used to have these things called double features back before movies were 4.5 hours long.
Yeah. Actually, that reminds me of that. That reminds me of that funny, a really old South Park episode back from season 2, where Cartman, comes up with this idea for a movie, and he sells it to a producer, and it's a big hit, and it's all there, and Cartman's giving credit, but he's only given $4, and he's like, why am I only getting $4? You said the movie made hundreds of millions of dollars. Yes, plus my fee, the producer's fee, the licensing fee, the labor union dues, all this, that, and this, that, and in the end, you get $4. Hey, that's more than most writers make. Yeah.
Wait. So wait.
What?
I wonder if Cartman would have been better or worse off if he had joined the guild.
Well, that particular episode was making fun of the corruption within the independent film industry, especially the Sundance Film Festival, because it's like the movies are often getting awards, and because people are talking about how it's like awards are only being given to movies for wokeness and not effort. It's like, oh no, they've always been like that.
Will someone please think of the producers?
Yeah, it's always the award shows, the academies and all that. They've always been about who you can schmooze and
Oh yeah, exactly. That's why you hear all those stories about how it's like, how the hell did that film get an Academy? I mean, yeah, it was good, but this other film was just so awesome. Why is that? And that's because the other film was made by a less influential and full director or producer, whereas the other one was by a guy, who bought all the review board guys, fancy drinks and filet mignon.
When George C. Scott made They Might Be Giants, they have this scene where it's in a meat locker, and they have the lights set up and everything, and they had just purchased all the meat and they were going to write it off because they were filming around it, and they had all the lights going, and the heat from the lights made the meat kind of smell. And at one point, the director apologized to George C. Scott and Joanne Woodward for that. And Scott said, "Oh, don't worry about it. It's just like Oscar night at the Academy Awards."
But
Yeah,
yeah,
he was not a fan of those awards, George C. Scott.
Who's Oscar Knight?
Oscar Knight? Oh, Oscar Knight. Speaking of producers, is that the reason why Hollywood is not firing bad people or kid fiddlers? I think it's just a good old boys club.
Yeah.
Much.
Well, yeah, that's why. Well, yeah, that's why Kathleen Kennedy still has a job.
I was going to say at this point, I think maybe good old girls club.
Well, that too.
Yeah.
Good old non-binary club.
Yeah. By the way,
I heard a good one. I heard a good one. Fair warning. This is terrible. How do non-binary samurais kill people? They/them.
Oh God!
Yeah.
I would apologize, but I'm not actually sorry.
Yeah. In all honesty, Shane, all this thing in Hollywood, I know the perfect solution with it without having the government intervene. You know what that is? Get rid of copyright laws.
Yeah.
Government. Oh my God!
In fact, back what I said earlier, copyright laws are largely the reason why a lot of writers get screwed over, because even if the idea is 100% your idea, often part of the deal to get the movie produced is they say you have to surrender all the copyrights to us. So even though
you legally retain copyrights to the screenplay, but you basically don't end up getting any royalties from the actual movie.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, people say, well, how are writers going to protect their work? It's like, look at Hollywood. There's plenty of stories of people who wrote their own stuff, and they are responsible for some classic films, but you don't hear about them because of copyright laws. The directors and the producers get almost all the rights. All they get is the original screenplay, and up until recently, nobody cared about that.
I mean, everything's a rip-off of a rip-off nowadays. I mean, there's no really such thing as originality anymore now.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and that's something else you see. They have like 50 different writers because the screenwriter, turns it in. But then you have all these co-writers from all these script doctors, that they've put on it, and or the ones who haven't really done anything except just arbitrarily changed a bunch of lines so that they'll get the credit and share the royalties with the screenwriter. Yeah. You see a lot of that in music now. 50 different people writing a song.
Oh yeah. And I get so angry because like people are so obsessed with stealing. Like, I mean, I've even seen cringy videos where people are saying, "Did you know that John Williams and Andrew Zimmern actually stole some lines from classical composers?" Which, by the way, if you actually study, you'll find that a lot of classical composers, they stole notes from each other all the time.
Oh yeah.
The most
Yeah.
the most productive and influential composers typically lived in countries that had no copyright law.
Right.
Yeah, I mean Mozart was pretty famous, for using very common, childhood nursery rhyme jingles, in his songs.
50 different people writing a song, yet most of the songs sound the same. Yep. I mean, it's just about getting yourself listed.
Yep.
Sing 4 chords. As they say.
As opposed to Bohemian Rhapsody, music and lyrics by one guy.
Yep. Yeah, it's
grab a beer. So you guys have a good one.
Oh, you heading out, Pikachu?
Yep, I am.
All right, thanks for stopping in.
Head out?
Pikachu, return!
Pikachu doesn't like Pokeballs, remember?
No.
Hey, just because one Pikachu doesn't like Pokeballs doesn't mean they all don't like Pokeballs. That's profane.
No, it's actually in the Pokedex that they hate being in Pokeballs.
Oh.
Which is weird because if I recall correctly, they recover quicker when they're in Pokeballs. Maybe.
Well, you'd
Pikachus
probably live longer in a plastic bubble, but I'm sure you wouldn't want to live in one.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
All right, I have no idea what Kate Just is putting in the comments.
It's always been an eternal mystery what it's like inside those things.
I think he's doing the chat version of testing 1, 2, 3 or whatever. SKM is talking about Myanmar. I haven't really been keeping up with that. Anyone know what's going on there?
Burma. In all honesty, given the region of Myanmar and Thailand, it's one of those things where it's like news. There's corrupt politicians in Myanmar, and I'm like, yeah, newsflash, water is wet.
Yeah, I mean, it's always been an unstable area.
Yeah. I mean, I've actually heard from some people like in Thailand, that was their like when there was that one coup d'etat back in 2012, they asked like a reaction to some people and they asked them, what are your thoughts of this new military junta? And one guy said, I mean, I don't really like it, but who the heck didn't see it coming? The military, he basically said the military in Thailand overthrows the government every 5 minutes.
Yeah, I've got Thai in-laws, and they always say that the Thai monarchy rules with the permission of the military.
Yep. Oh yeah. I mean, and we've seen it plenty of times. If you do something in Thailand that the military does not like, they'll declare you incompetent. They'll send in the troops to remove you, to force you into exile, and then they set up a committee for peace, and they rule with an iron fist for 5 years until they get unpopular. Then they let another corrupt politician take over, and then when that politician fails, they start the process all over again.
Yep.
Fun fact, though, about Myanmar is that Myanmar is actually a forgotten story about how socialism doesn't work, because for many years, Myanmar, when it was called Burma, it was ruled by the Burmese Socialist Party under Ne Win.
So are you saying Ne Win did Ne win? Uh-huh.
Yeah,
he did Ne win, laddie.
Okay. It's okay. It's okay. Not a lot of people have heard of Ne Win.
Also,
his name.
Also, did you ever see that person on Scottish news who was actually complaining that Scotland had too many Scottish people?
Damn Scots, they are in Scotland.
It actually happened.
Reminds me of that one joke I saw that one time, where some people are going to Germany and they're going to go to Berlin so they can experience German culture. and the whole place looks like a street bazaar you would see in a Middle Eastern nation like Jordan. And they asked their flight attendants, like, are you sure I think we got on the wrong flight. We were supposed to be in Berlin. And they're like, yeah, this is Berlin.
If you want to experience the real culture of any country, don't go to the capital cities.
Yeah.
Just don't.
Well, you know,
Oh, but I am really Scottish, SK, and this is a true Scots accent.
And the thing,
All the other
is,
ones are being fake. They're all pretending.
Well,
This is what it really sounds like.
Shane,
It's a conspiracy.
Shane, if you're on video, you're gonna have to put the eyebrows on.
well, I was gonna say, yeah, you're right, Pitsqueak. And the thing is, it's not even about immigration or anything. It's just that, listen, the capital is also where a lot of the tourists and pickpocketers are. Like, I've heard a lot of people say, like, if you're gonna go to Japan and you want to experience Japanese culture, do not go to Tokyo, go to Kyoto, because that's where all the palaces and the temples are.
I'd either go to Kyoto or Akihabara.
Yeah. Yeah, Tokyo is where all the office buildings and the anime tourist traps are.
Yeah, it's a fallacy to say I'm not a true Scotsman.
Yeah. Yeah, I get so tired of people saying, "Oh, China and Venezuela aren't real socialists," that I just, flat out say, "Oh yeah, that's right. Venezuela's not socialist because they put sugar on their porridge, and everyone knows a real socialist doesn't put sugar on their porridge." Yeah. I'm sorry, I forgot about that. Yeah.
Wait, how would Venezuela even find sugar or porridge?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a funny joke. It's like, oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, Maduro's like Venezuelans put sugar on their porridge, and no real socialists put sugar on their porridge, and all the Venezuelan people are like, what's sugar? And what's porridge?
Yeah, real socialists eat fried rocks.
Yeah.
You guys remember that?
By the way,
I remember the government encouraging them to eat their pets.
Yeah. But no, there was one of the Venezuelan governors who told that the people couldn't get food at the store. He said, well, we can eat fried rocks.
Yeah.
That's kind of like let them eat cake only to a ridiculous extreme.
You know what's really
worse.
funny and kind of cringy though, Shane, is when people say, well, libertarians pull no true Scotsman all the time, when we point out, well, look what this corporation did, and we say that's corporatism. Isn't that a no true Scotsman? No, because corporatism has an example, and when government gets involved with a company, either by bailing them out or making them make a decision, that's no longer capitalism because it wasn't done voluntarily.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a fallacy when it doesn't fit the definition, which is my joke earlier. It's a fallacy to say I'm not a true Scotsman because I wasn't born in Scotland, never been to Scotland. Oh, but you can't say I'm not a true Scotsman. That's a fallacy, laddie.
Oh, that name, Killian, isn't that of Celtic origin?
Well, I'm from the German Killians. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you mentioned somewhere a long time ago when someone asked you about your name, you said there's only people who have the last name Killian come from two families. One's from Germany and one's from Ireland.
Yeah, the Germans basically come from one guy in the early 1700s, and then the Irish Killians. I think it was just a couple of families that came over in the 1800s.
Yeah.
But I think most of the Killians in the country are from the German Killians.
Yeah, it reminds me of that fun fact video. It was like a fun fact video about top 10 fun facts about genetics and genetic heritage. And it says, here's the thing, if you're white and of European descent, congratulations, you're related to most of the European monarchs.
I've traced my way back to Edward III, and of course all his ancestors, so King John and all them, and King Harold.
Yep.
And I've also traced it back through Scandinavian royalty.
Yep.
Huh.
And to be fair, it's not just unique to white people. I remember reading somewhere that almost all Asian males are distant descendants of Genghis Khan.
No, most people in the world are. No, that's what the 23andMe people are finding it. You got people who are just white, as I am. I haven't done it, but it's like everyone goes straight back to Europe and then from there to Africa eventually. But then you have this one thing going over to Asia. And it's pretty much an automatic thing, I think, because they get called all the time. Hey, why would I have one line going back to Asia? Genghis Khan.
Yep. Well, yeah, because I mean, Genghis Khan himself, Genghis Khan and his sons. I mean, they had multiple wives and hundreds of concubines. So, and that's probably not also counting, the girls they might have banged, while on a conquest. They might have been.
Oh yeah, all the conquests. I think is what did it. Yeah.
Yeah.
My family mainly can trace it back to at least the German side of my family can trace back to Prussia. They moved to Hanover during the days of the Hanseatic League and made quite a lot of money as traders.
Yeah, the Killians were actually from Bavaria.
Huh.
Yeah, there was that joke. It was like, as they always call George Washington the father of our country, but it really should be Ben Franklin when you look at how many illegitimate children he had.
And Thomas Jefferson. Yeah, like that
Jefferson
one Family
didn't have
Guy
that
joke.
many.
Like that one Family Guy joke where it shows Thomas Jefferson, his wife, and his 2 daughters, and he looks around and he's like, "You know what, honey? This isn't fair. We should have all the kids in here." And then he waves, and then like dozens of black kids come out of nowhere and stand next to him.
I mean, even if you go by the Hemmings family tradition, he only had a couple of kids by her, and most of them were from like an uncle or something like that. And the ones where they did the genetic testing, where they supposedly, confirmed that was from Jefferson, that was the ones that were, according to tradition, came from the uncle. And of course, they would have the same Y chromosome because it was a Y chromosome test. And the ones that, supposedly came from Jefferson didn't. Of course, you never know. There might have been, an illegitimate birth or two in there. Anything like that will break the chain. But
yeah, genetics are fun. Like, like one thing, like another cool thing I also read about it was like a list called Top 10 Times Genetics Ruined Your Childhood. And one of them was genetics solve the mystery of King Tut, because for many years people were like, King Tut was only 19, 20 years old when he died. How did he die so young? Oh, wait a minute, there's injuries on him. Oh, was he murdered? Was there a conspiracy to kill him? But now we know what killed him, and that was he was so inbred, it wouldn't have taken him much to kill him.
Yep.
Yeah, he had a clubbed foot. He suffered from like a rare form of genetic osteoporosis. He had a very bad back, and basically King Tut is a perfect example of why brothers and sisters shouldn't marry and have children.
Well, like Ramesses II, I think it was, his chief wife was his daughter.
Ew.
And I mean, she was like the lead wife, the one who, had the most kids by him and who had all of the big, all of the honors and everything. She was his first daughter, I think.
I'm very much reminded of the Doctor Who story, The Empty Child.
Do you think that nanotech can create stronger muscles and bones so women may be able to fight in the ring against men? I'm not sure how much of that is the muscles and bones actually being stronger and how much of it is the overall setup, like women having, a lower center of balance and things like that.
Yeah,
because a lot of that is about the overall structure.
I told
not
that.
about the
I told
individual
that.
muscles.
I told that to Kitsune one time. I jokingly said, "You know what I'm gonna do for Halloween? I'm not gonna go trick or treating. I'm just gonna put on a gas mask and walk around going, 'Are you my mommy?'"
Mommy, I'm scared of the bombs.
Yeah.
I mean, she wasn't
Yeah, it's like,
actually
what are
his. She wasn't actually his, sister. She just said that she was because she
Yeah.
was covering up the fact that she was a teenage mother.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know the reason why he was acting the way he was because the Chula nanobots, they knew that that's not what a human was supposed to look like, but they didn't have a base, so they just improvised with what they had, and that's why he was looking for his mommy, because it was the nano machines looking for, okay, if we find this thing's mother, we can get the genetic reference, and then we can actually make a proper correction.
Yeah.
You'd think that they'd be
And
able
then
to
they
tell
can
the
go and
difference
fix-
between the human and the gas mask, but
Well, no, because they'd never encountered one before.
Yeah.
Had no idea what a human looked like.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of clear, that the nanomachines could tell, by the genetic makeup, that's not what a human was really supposed to look like. But as Shane said, they never encountered a human before, so the machines are like, okay, well, what is a human supposed to look like? And then they're basically like, okay,
Well, that's like
here's
in
what
the-
we'll do.
That's like in the Star Trek pilot when, that one survivor, the one human that survived on Talos, when they drop the illusion at the end and you see what she really looks like because she was, so far damaged in the crash that they could fix her, they could keep her alive and everything worked, but they'd never seen a human before, so they didn't know how to put her back together. And so she ended up being this, grotesque monstrosity, and that's why they were doing the illusion, so she could have the illusion of being a beautiful, perfect human being.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Jeff, the problem is that these weren't sentient beings; these were nanomachines. The nanomachines were just doing their job, and like they said, and like we were just saying, they knew that something wasn't right with the kid, but at the same time, they didn't, because they never encountered another human before. They didn't know, like, how do these humans biologically function. So, like I said, the program basically just told them, you know what, we'll just improvise, then we'll have him look for his mother, and then we'll go from there. And once she came out and admitted she was their mother, then the machines were like, oh, okay, let's scan. Oh, that's what an actual human's supposed to look at. Oh, our bad. Yeah. Yeah, that was a pretty good episode. I especially love that one where he tries to save everyone from the bomb. Yeah, Harkness, and he's like, computer, can I do this? No. Can I do that? No.
You cut out there, Darth.
Activate emergency protocol something, and it gives them a dry
I'm always
martini.
reminded of that
Yeah.
Mickey and K9's interactions in school reunion.
Yeah.
No, because there was that one part where he was something like, "Hey, can we put the bomb in the escape
The
capsule?"
RNA
There was
car.
there is no escape capsule on board. No, I see the problem with that. I'll get in the escape capsule. There is no escape capsule on board.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, YouTube banning dislikes. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's just because
Especially Joe Biden.
anyone else remember when it wasn't just like or dislike? You could actually rate it from 1 to 5 stars.
Oh, I vaguely remember that. I also remember when you could watch almost anything you wanted on YouTube, even full-length movies.
So
I mean,
YouTube is
the people who post videos already have the option to disable likes, dislikes, and comments. I don't know what else you like. It's ridiculous.
well, they want
I don't know.
YouTube to make the decision for them, so YouTube can take the blame. It's like, no, we're not being petty and disabling dislikes. YouTube is taking them away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like YouTube. Why are you forcefully deleting people's comments? Because you ordered me to? Don't switch the conversation.
Yeah, Jeff, it was a 2-parter. The first part was the empty child, and part 2 was the Dr. Dances, because they'd gone back to the old way of doing it in the 60s, where, instead of saying, such and such part 1, such and such part 2, each part had a separate title originally, so they went back to that.
Yeah. Also, David Tennant made a reference to the Empty Child episode because there's that one. Because if I recall correctly, there's that one episode where they end up in a dimension where, for whatever reason, Earth's atmosphere becomes toxic unless you're wearing a gas mask. And one of the guys is like, "Doctor, can you hear me?" And the doctor replies while wearing the gas mask, "Are you my mummy?"
Oh my
Yeah,
god!
and
Yeah.
Peter Capaldi did the same thing with Mummy on the Orient Express. The mummy shows up and he says, "Oh, are you my mummy?"
Yeah.
Elizabeth Sladen actually did that in the commentary for Genesis of the Daleks, because one of the first things you see, you're on Skaro and there's all this gas everywhere and people pop up from behind a hill in the gas mask, and right at that moment of the commentary she said, "Are you my mummy?"
My god!
Yeah.
I'm told they actually do a decent Dalek voice.
Yeah, I did one a few times. I was having fun when I did the coverage of the Julian Assange trial, because I was using Craig Murray's coverage of it, and one time he kind of said that like her cadence, the judge's cadence was like a Dalek. So I started calling her Judge Dalek, and then every time I quoted her, I do the Dalek voice. Go to your room. Really glad
Yeah.
that worked. Those would have been terrible last words.
Yeah.
Yes, we're talking
yeah,
about
it's like
Doctor Who.
Yeah, it's like you wonder. It's like, how are they going to escape? Is he going to come up with this elaborate plan? No, he's just like, go to your room, mummy. Go to your room. I am very crossed with you. And they just all walk away and go back to their hospital beds.
Yeah.
Yeah. That did.
Yeah,
That was
after that being the big cliffhanger over the week.
Yeah.
Although when there was like one back in the Peter Davison, I think it was the Visitation. They've come down to the bottom of the steps, and there's just a wall there. And the doctor's like, why would you have a wall? Stairs are for going somewhere. Why would you have a wall there? So they tried to go back up, and the bad guys have, shut the door to the castle and locked it. And so then they come back down, and the doctor's gone, and they're yelling, "Doctor, doctor," and that's the cliffhanger. So then they come back next week and they back it up and they're yelling, "Doctor, doctor," and the doctor pokes his head through the hologram at the bottom of the stairs that looks like a wall and says, "Yes."
Yeah.
It was just a hologram. There was an actual door there that it was hiding.
Wow.
Speaking of stairs, that reminds me of that one clip I saw. I can't remember which episode it was from, but they're running away from the Daleks and they're on a stairs, and they're like, "Okay, we should be safe. You can't come up here," because they're immobilized to that machine. And then out of nowhere, the Dalek grows like this hover technology, and then it starts chasing them.
Yeah, that was back in the McCoy era.
Yeah.
Now we're talking about Doctor Who right now, Grambo.
Yeah, for the heck of it.
Yeah, but that happened after the Dalek Civil War, because they had anti-grav technology at least as far back as, what was it, Planet of the Daleks, where they had that. And so you're like, okay, well, why don't they just weld that onto the bottom of a Dalek? Well, because Daleks have to believe that they're superior and they're perfect, and any modification themselves would cause them to believe they were inferior. And so then after they went back to resurrect Davros, during the Mavellan Wars, and Davros kind of gave them what they needed to do to start progressing again, they divided into two factions that each saw each other as imperfect. So.
Well, yeah, if I recall correctly, the Chris Eccleston doctor, he once made a Dalek commit suicide by pointing out that he was a flawed Dalek, so by his own logic, he was inferior, and he points that out. And I remember before killing itself, the Dalek looks at him and it's like, "You would have made a great Dalek."
Why do you keep pronouncing
this
it like
last
that?
season? This last season was pretty good, Jeff.
Really?
Yeah.
I had heard everything just kind of went to crap after Timeless Child.
Well, Timeless
from what
Child
I
was the last
heard-
episode.
Oh,
I mean,
Yeah.
aside from
Well, from what I
the
heard about
New Year's
season-
special.
Well, from what I heard, because I did see this one video from this one guy who he did point out, that, he says, now I'll admit the female doctor was pretty good, but let's be real here. The way they introduced her, they were asking for her to be a failure. It's like,
How?
well, because of the whole, glass ceiling and like all the interviews they were giving where they were like, oh yeah, it's about time and all that. It's like,
But that wasn't the production crew that was doing that.
yeah, it's like, yeah, one person said the best way they should have introduced her as a doctor is introduce her the way all the other doctors are. Something big happens and the new form just appears. That's how
Well, that's what they did. That's what they did. You have Capaldi giving his last epic speech, and then he regenerates into her, and she sees her reflection, says, "Oh, brilliant," and then crashes the TARDIS.
Well,
not too dissimilar from how Matt Smith was introduced.
Oh, by the way, important question: dandy or clown?
What?
Dandy or clown?
He's talking about 2 and 3. That's how the first Doctor referred to them when he met them. Oh, so you're my replacements, a dandy and a clown. Yeah, 3 was the dandy, 2 was the clown.
The best female Doctor was Joan Lonely, and if you don't know who that is, you're uncultured.
Oh yeah, yeah.
The best Doctor was Peter Cushing. The best Doctor was Peter Cushing.
Oh god.
I don't think Peter Cushing played Doctor Who. I know he played Dr. Frankenstein.
Oh,
no, he played Doctor Who. He literally played Doctor Who. He didn't play the Doctor, he played Doctor Who. There were 2 movies made in the 60s based on a couple of Doctor Who episodes, The Daleks and the Dalek Invasion of Earth. Except in this one, instead of the Doctor, his actual name was Doctor Who, played by Peter Cushing, and he was an Earthling who built a TARDIS inside a time machine inside a police box.
Didn't Cushing himself come up with like an explanation for how that could fit into the Doctor Who lore?
I don't know. Because it's the same stories, it's just happening a different way.
Then again, this was the guy that blew up Alderaan while wearing slippers. So,
oh, I mean, he would have been a great proper Doctor. Yeah, he would have been great.
Which, by the way, those slippers Peter Cushing wore, they're actually still around. They're actually kept at a film museum.
Huh.
Yeah, I saw a picture of it. Yep, it's the slippers that he wore because, for those that don't know, Peter Cushing, he was a pretty tall guy and he had really big feet. And unfortunately, they learned a little too late that the outfit they made him for Grand Moff Tarkin was way too small, in particular the boots, and they were incredibly uncomfortable to wear. So for scenes where he was only seen from the waist up, he would just wear slippers instead of the boots.
Yeah, Jeff Capaldi's, I think his era, as far as the writing and the story quality was concerned, was maybe it wasn't as good overall. But, individually it had some of the best, like the Zygon 2-parter. As far as Jodie Whittaker's, her first season, I think it was one of those cases where all of the episodes were good, but none of them were great. But then none of them were cheese eaters. But this one, you have the opening 2-parter, the last 2-parter, and that one episode in the middle. They were all great. And then the rest were cheese eaters. So I don't know. It seems like you're either going to have them all be kind of mediocre to good, but as soon as you try to make some of them great, others start eating the cheese. That just seems to be how it goes with Doctor Who, though. And there's that theory that it's, every other season. Because let's face it, David Tennant's first season had some great stuff, but yeah, it also had Fear Her and Love and Monsters. Yeah.
So my girlfriend's not the only one who hated Love and Monsters.
Oh, everyone hates Love and Monsters.
I've never seen that episode. What's that?
It's focused on
Count
Elton.
yourself lucky. It is not great. It's not good.
I think the episode would have worked a little better if the Doctor hadn't been in it at all. It was just an Elton and Jackie episode.
I don't know. The monster was dumb. And we won't even get into what their relationship ended up being.
Yeah.
What's your opinion of the jackasses saying AR-15 is no match for tanks and drones? Well, I mean, it is. And an AR-15 isn't a very strong weapon. Usually the way it goes is everyone's favorite doctor is the one they see first, and everyone's least favorite is the one that follows. But, you know, it's how it goes. Every time there's a new doctor, oh, this new doctor has ruined everything. He's ruined the show. It's not what it is, not like the last guy. You know, then he regenerates again. And then it's the same thing, except the same one that was getting panned was like, oh, you know. David, oh, he's this skinny guy with a stupid voice. Oh no, he's ruined everything. Why couldn't they have kept Eccleston? Then, of course, Tennant ended up being one of the most popular doctors ever. He regenerates into Matt Smith. Oh, Matt Smith, you know, he's too young and he's lanky and he's not coordinated and he's just ruined it.
If I recall correctly, people were asking, oh, why did they get rid of Eccleston? And apparently Eccleston himself has said he admitted he didn't want to play the role for long.
Well, the idea, the reason why Russell Davies brought him on was he always wanted David Tennant to play it. But when he brought the episode back and he wanted to reintroduce all the elements of the show, you know, the Daleks and the TARDIS and everything, how everything worked. And he also wanted to introduce regeneration, but the only way you can do that is to kill that doctor. So he brought Eccleston on. You know, the idea was, you know, just come on for a season and then we'll regenerate. But he ended up being really popular. And so Davis asked him, you know, do you want to stay on as the doctor? But he turned it down.
I can see why. He was fantastic.
Yeah.
He was.
Yeah. And to be fair, I can also understand why he would have rejected it, because I don't know the precise reason, but judging from what I could tell from him, I think the reason why he did it was simply because, you know, he may not be well known outside of the US, but in the UK, he's a pretty well respected, you know, actor who's been in a lot of British movies and TV shows, and he was afraid of being typecasted, you know.
Well, no, he said that the reason why, he hasn't gone into details, but he did not like the way that the people who worked for the BBC were being treated by the higher ups.
Oh.
And he just didn't want to be a part of that.
As far as
but he's doing the audios.
As far as Eccleston goes, the classic doctor he probably reminded me most of was Hartnell.
Yeah.
I think I know why David Tennant was liked though as a doctor, especially among older fans, was because he was like the fourth Doctor, because you know because the stereotype that Doctor Who has like a weird personality, that was actually the fourth Doctor, because as you said before that he was like the first incarnation he was like a cranky old man that had seen everything, and the second one he was like a polite gentleman, the third one he was like a mad scientist, and the fourth one they actually made him behave like an alien.
I've heard
it was mostly up to the actors, but the idea at the start was the Doctor wasn't supposed to be the hero. Ian was the hero, and the Doctor learns to be a hero from Ian. So, Christopher Lee was awesome. But then Patrick Troughton decided to take it a different way. Patrick Troughton was a serious actor who played it comically, and then John Pertwee was a comic actor who played it seriously. And Tom Baker was just the one who was the complete alien, and that was mostly him, because he just wanted to play it just as a crazy alien.
I remember seeing an interview with him, and he was like, and the reason why he got the idea is because he was debating how he was going to play the character, and he asked for background, like, what is the Doctor? Is he like a mad scientist? Is he this deity and all that? And they told him, well, he's a seemingly immortal time traveling alien. It's like, oh, so he's an alien. And then he's like, well, if he's an alien, he should act a little bit like an alien.
Well, because
Which is why he is
if you look at the script for Robot, and this is pretty much how they do every Doctor's first episode, they write the Doctor very generically, just to kind of see what the actor does with the role. And so, it was Tom Baker who just took it and, just went with it in the crazy alien way.
Yeah, and they showed clips from the classic Doctor Who, some as much as they could, and the thing with Tom Baker is that they would all be in a serious situation that calls for out of nowhere the Doctor would come up, offer them a jelly bean, and go, "Jelly baby."
But yeah, I've heard that as far as comparisons go, I've heard some people compare David Tennant most to Trout.
I don't know about that.
So as for why the second Doctor looks so much like Lord Salamander, I blame morphic resonance.
Yeah, by the way, Shane, I saw this one really cool. It was an alternate history wiki, and it was an alternate history of what if Doctor Who was an American show, and some of the ideas they had for who would play the Doctor if it was an American show actually made a lot of sense. Like, for instance, the fourth Doctor was played by Gene Wilder, and I'm like, yeah, I can see that.
If Doctor Who was an American show, it
wouldn't work as an American show.
It would have been ruined by Chevy Chase.
Is my sound muted? Can you hear me? I'm seeing the meter going.
I can't hear anything you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's happened before where people can hear through Discord, but not through. Yeah. Someone tell me in the chat if you can hear me.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, the thing is, Shane, I actually read somewhere that as controversial as she was, the female Doctor isn't the most hated Doctor Who of them all. Apparently, from what I read, the least liked Doctor was the sixth one.
Yeah.
Well, Colin Baker got a raw deal because they had planned out a 3-season story arc for him, and the reason why he didn't play it longer was because the higher ups didn't like him. They didn't like the actor, not that they didn't like what was going on with the character. But the idea was to start off with the Doctor that was as unlike Peter Davison as possible. So, gruff and rude and everything, and have him follow this arc over 3 seasons, growing into this Doctor. And then, he ended up only playing a season and a half, and you saw him more in Trial of a Time Lord, what he was more supposed to end up like. But
I always thought the sixth Doctor was certainly colorful.
But I mean, you listen to the audios, and you can hear more like what he was supposed to be and how he was going to play the role.
And the most forgettable Doctor is the eighth Doctor.
Paul McGann, except in the audios again.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I think they did more audios with him than anyone else, and I mean, he's probably the most popular of the audios.
But the joke is that not a lot of people know about the eighth Doctor because he never actually appeared on a TV show. He only starred in some of the made-for-TV movies.
Well, it was the 96 made-for-TV movie, and then they did that webisode right before the 50th anniversary to show him, because we never saw his regeneration, so they showed him regenerating into John Hurt. And and when he was in kind of his last speech as the Doctor, he gives a tribute to all his companions, and he mentions Charlie, Kara's, Lucy, Tamsin, and Molly, and it's like, okay, all of his audios just became canon.
That was excellent.
They all happened. Yeah.
But then again, all I'm learning from this whole Doctor Who controversy is that the BBC is terrible, and
Oh, they're
and
horrible.
and the only reason they're still active is because they're owned by the British government. Yeah.
Well, but I mean, Doctor Who has gotten a lot better since they started producing it in Wales, where they don't have as much interference from the.
Yeah.
Oh, you got a license to that telly?
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, that's the thing. When the stupid conservatives took over that one time, they were like, well, there's we need to do the cutbacks at the BBC to make sure it's more sound financially. So we need to get rid of Doctor Who and EastEnders. It's like, wait a minute, you want the BBC to be more financially sound, so you want to cancel the 2 shows that give you your biggest amount of income?
Well, yeah, and fun fact, the BBC are largely the reason why the very first episodes of Doctor Who technically no longer exist anymore, because you know what
Because they wiped them, yeah.
they wiped them. They wiped them, and the other remaining samples were thrown in a place to decay. They weren't taken care of.
Yeah, it was because they thought there wasn't going to be a market for black and white now that there was color. And what's the guy's name?
And then color restoration.
Ian Levine. Ian Levine is most credited with stopping that. And apparently he was, if he had been like 24 hours later in stopping it, they would have lost the Daleks, the first Dalek story. And so most of the ones that they've been finding have been from overseas TV stations that were supposed to have returned the films but didn't.
Yeah.
And so they were able to do that. And then of course you have audios of all of them because you didn't have VCRs at the time, but a lot of fans had reel-to-reel tape players, and so they'd record audio. And so that's how they've been able to do animations like they just did with the Faceless ones. And I think Fury from the Deep is next. They're animating the episodes to the original soundtracks. Skeleton Skier, gotta love the Christmas special with the face huggers. Yep. That was good. What was it called? It wasn't Last Christmas. It was I remember, but it had Nick Frost as Santa Claus. Now, if your name is Nick Frost, of course you're born to play that role.
Yeah.
Only one, but they have to be careful if things could get weird.
Oh, yeah, it was Last Christmas. It was Last Christmas.
Or Tim Allen.
How many doctors does it take to change a light bulb?
How many?
People who watch this when it's posted later might be able to get it.
I know that I know that it's probably 11 because that was when River Song finally got on him about changing the bulb on top. Although it has changed several times. There was a couple where it was actually a spinning blue police light. I think it just depended on whichever police box prop was available at the time.
Yeah.
I don't think it was until the John Nathan Turner era that they actually built a dedicated prop for it.
Yeah.
Getting clicking from you again, Daniel.
Oh.
Yeah, out of curiosity, I looked it up, and apparently police boxes are still a thing in the UK, although they're not really used, and they're more just for tourist decorations now.
Yeah, and some of them been repurposed into other things. Like there was like a one of the double wide red police boxes in Scotland that's now like a hot dog stand or something. But yeah, there were a few of the Mackenzie Trench type police boxes that all of the tourists want to go and get their pictures taken in front of.
Yep. It's pretty funny about how different the UK is from the US in some cases. And actually, here's one funny joke that I heard from a British friend, from a British acquaintance of mine on Discord one time. He jokingly said, "Here's a joke that only British people will get. Why do babies go do their business in their diapers? Because they don't want to pay 30 quid for a public toilet." Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's where the phrase "spend a penny" comes from, because you used to have to actually put a penny in a public toilet to use it.
Yeah.
Back when pennies, before inflation, were worth a lot.
Yeah. Nowadays pennies on their own are actually more valuable if you melted them down and sold the copper.
Well, the English pennies. What would it have been?
Because if I recall correctly, there's like 5 cents worth of copper in a single U.S. penny.
No, not anymore. That's only like pre-1982 pennies or something like that. I don't think there's any copper in them now, or maybe they're copper plated or something. Copper colored zinc or something like that. But yeah, well, the British pennies, back when this phrase was, they had the whole thing where it was, it was 20 shillings to the pound and 12 pence to the shilling, I think. So a penny was 1/12 of 5% of a pound.
Yeah.
Whatever the math on that.
Oh yeah, Schism. That reminds me of one funny story I read about a tour guide who was in New York one time, and he says one thing that always makes me laugh about a lot of people who come to the U.S. on tourism is they forget how big it is, and like a lot of people come to New York City and they're like, oh, I want to see the White House and the Washington Monument, and we have to tell them, that's a few hundred miles south from here, because.
Yeah, they don't really get how big America is, and it's like they talk about, oh well, we're so traveled because we went to Paris. Well, where have you been? It's like, well, from London to Paris is about like from where I am here to Wilmington, North Carolina.
Yeah.
It's like the other end of the state.
Any particular reason you specified Wilmington?
I don't know. It's just the distance of it. You cut out, Daniel.
Speaking of Washington D.C., Shane, I remember.
I'm pretty close to there, so it was just a funny coincidence.
Yeah. No, I've been to Wilmington. It's nice. Seeing the USS North Carolina and.
Oh, let me know next time you're down here.
Might be a while. I don't know when we haven't had like a proper vacation. I don't know how long. I'd love to do that kind of vacation again, though, where you like start in Wilmington and just go up the Outer Banks, all the way up to, Kitty Hawk and Nag's Head. And
it's pretty, the thing is though, just like how a lot of Europeans, fail to comprehend how big America is. I've heard a lot of Americans often fail to comprehend how small Europe is in comparison, because there's so many Europeans that have said it's like, well, I was born in France, but I got educated, in the UK, and they're like, wow, you've been to several different countries. It's like, well, yeah, France and the UK in comparison aren't far apart from each other. A French guy going to a UK university, that's like a person from Wisconsin going to the university at Indianapolis in Indiana. That's what it is for them.
That's
about right. Yeah.
I remember, like that's nothing. I had a friend who was born in Malaysia, went to school in the UK. So that's a lot more.
Yeah, that's a hike. That's a long hike.
Yeah.
There was something, I don't remember what this was, but someone was talking about Europe like it was this really big place to go to, and Africa was just Oh, it's just the small area. You know, you can go around. You know, the Africans were basically all from the same place, and they were trying to persuade the guy that Africa is like 5 times the size of Europe.
Yeah. I mean, there are nations. There's obviously nations bigger than the U.S. You know, like Russia and China. But a lot of people have jokingly said with Russia and China, because people are saying that China's overpopulated. The irony, it's not overpopulated. It's just that everyone chooses to live on the east side because people are like, well, why aren't they spaced out better? It's like, have you been to West China? Nothing but desert. Yeah.
Maybe they could get a casino industry.
Not to mention the Chinese doesn't want people living there because that's also where they're conducting their ethnical genocides, and they don't want people knowing about that. So
yeah.
Oh
well, back in the days of the Soviet Union, one of the ways they punished political prisoners was by sending them to live in Siberia.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, China still does that. Instead of going to Siberia, you go to I can't pronounce the prefectures, but I'm not going to try. But they would send you to Western China, which was basically a military camp in the middle of the desert. So,
but that's true anywhere, isn't it? Pretty much anywhere you go, there's a larger cluster of people on the coast.
Yeah. Kind of reminds me of that John Stossel episode, when they were talking about how immigration policing was getting out of control. And that one guy was like, listen, we're only enforcing the rule only 100 miles away from the U.S. border. And John Stossel pointed out that's where most people live. In fact, some entire states are. That's as big as some entire states in some areas.
Yeah, it was something like 50% of the population lives within 100 miles of the border.
Yeah. Yeah, because the closer you get into a state, that's what a lot of people call the boondocks. That's where you see all the flat land and farms. So if you're a tourist there to see the sights, unless you really love the countryside, there's not much to see.
Yeah, John Smith wants to know if we've ever heard of Brett Keane. The name's familiar, but I can't place it.
Yeah, sounds vaguely familiar.
No. And SKM says the Japanese makes the Nazis and even the Soviets look like Boy Scouts. The only other one that came close to their level of brutality was Belgium under Leopold II. Yeah, if you look at a lot of the stuff that Japan was doing in World War II, I mean, it was horrendous.
Oh yeah, and unlike the Nazis, they got away with most of it. Yeah, the guy that founded Unit 731, he got away with it. He was never punished. He got away scot-free. But then
there are still Guamanians alive today whose fathers were captured and beheaded by the Japanese, basically for no reason, and they've been trying to get reparations from Japan.
Yeah.
Not that America was all that great to Guam, but they weren't doing that,
Yeah,
Even
by the
America
way, Shane, you mentioned, Daniel, you mentioned, Belgium, Congo under King Leopold. Someone posted in a comment section that the Belgian Free State is proof of evil imperial capitalism because it was quote unquote private property. Yeah, of the king.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's like when they were talking about like the landlords.
They always use nominally private property,
yeah.
That's always.
I mean, our word landlord is very much a malapropism nowadays because it originally referred to people who were literally lords, the House of Lords in Parliament, who owned land in Ireland that the Irish peasants were having to live on, and so everyone keeps equating today's landlords to those.
People fail to realize the term peasant didn't mean you were poor or a farmer. A peasant was literally a title. It basically meant, you were an indentured servant of the king or the lord.
I think it pretty much meant that you didn't own land, I think.
Yeah. And the thing is, I mean, the reason why peasants didn't own land wasn't because of land distribution or because of money. It was simply because they legally weren't allowed to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Back in the Middle Ages, there was only two ways to get land. You either had to form an army and take it by force, or you had to become BFFs with the right, noblemen, and they would give you the grant.
But I mean, even today, yeah, in the British Parliament, you get elected to the House of Commons. But the House of Lords, I think it's still the case that if you can just convince enough people in the House of Lords that you should be in the House of Lords, you're in the House of Lords.
Yeah. Isn't there a rule in the isn't there like an unofficial rule that you are not allowed to die in the House of Lords, House of Parliament?
I haven't heard that.
Because apparently there's a tradition that must always be practiced that that if you die in the House of Commons or the House of Lords, you're entitled to a state-funded funeral, and so to save taxpayers money, they don't let sick people in because they're afraid we don't want you to keel over and die. Yeah.
Hadn't heard that, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because it's pretty fun. It's pretty funny because a lot of people like to make fun of Americans because they're like, yeah, Americans are all about tradition and my freedom. It's like a lot of European countries are the same way. I mean, that's the reason why if you look at the British courts, everyone dresses in archaic, stupid robes because, well, it's tradition.
Well, and the powdered wigs. That's even dumber.
Yeah. Yeah.
They act like they're all superior. They act like they're all superior and everything, and they look ridiculous.
Yeah. Which, by the way, people, you know why powdered wigs were invented? It was to cover up the sores that people got from syphilis and bug bites.
Generally, the reason for powdered wigs back in the day was because just to avoid the problem of lice, what you would do is shave your head and put on a powdered wig. Yeah. But I think by the time the 1700s came around, it was more of a fashion than anything else.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just so funny. It's like, I've actually heard from some people like who are foreigners, but they have been tried in the UK because of that and all that, and their own lawyer has to tell them, look, I know where you come from, it's serious, but you cannot laugh. I don't care how ridiculous the judge talks or what he looks like, you cannot laugh. You must resist the urge to laugh. Because if you laugh and point out, it's like, listen, judge, it's just like, it's ridiculous. You look silly. They're going to say, are you attacking this court? He's guilty.
Yeah.
Yeah. But at least be thankful you don't live in Japan, because in Japan, they don't have a judge and jury system. It's an inquisitional style.
Yeah, inquisitorial rather than adversarial.
Yeah, fun fact. The reason why Japan has a high conviction rate is actually because it's next to impossible for a person to properly defend themselves. I mean, getting put on trial in Japan, it's like the Franz Kafka book, because really all the trial is the judge saying you're a bad person, here's what you did, here's how bad we're going to punish you, and here's how sorry you should feel for doing it, And if you or your lawyer raise a finger to defend, they only say, oh, you're getting defensive, that means you're guilty.
Yep.
Yeah. Kind of reminds me of like some of those stupid parents, that punish their kid because they think their kid did something, and you ask them, well, what justification do you have? It's like, well, when I brought it up, they started crying. If they weren't guilty, they wouldn't have cried.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And it's one thing that a lot of parents do that I've heard will really, really mess up your kid, and it's something that parents need to do. When you're wrong and your kid is right, you have to learn to swallow your pride. You cannot be around saying, well, circumstances at the time. No, if you think your kids, did something wrong and you punish them, but it later turns out they were correct, you have to say, I'm sorry, I was wrong.
Yep.
Yeah. That's especially true if your kid's a teenager, because, it's pretty funny because, people are always going around. I saw this one, child therapist saying one time, it's like, it's so funny how so many parents are like, my teenager is out of control. Why weren't they behaving like when they were a little kid? And when they say that, he's like, well, there's your problem. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's like they talk about, all these kids turning into criminals. What the parents need to do, they've given them a good spanking. If their parents had given them a good spanking, that wouldn't have happened. Statistically, they probably were spanked.
Oh, yeah.
Rather than not, because, I mean,
was
this should be one of
spanking-
those, like, duh things, but if you spank your kids, there's a greater likelihood that they're going to end up being violent, because guess who they learned that from?
Yep.
Yeah, do as I say, not as I do does not work.
Yep. Yep. Well, my grandpa spanked me, and my dad spanked me, and I turned out okay. You go to your grandpa. Well, my dad spanked me, so I was okay. Go to your great grandpa. My dad spanked me, so it must have been okay. Go to your great great grandpa. Oh yeah, my dad was a hopeless alcoholic, and he would beat me for no reason.
Yeah.
I mean, I talk about who spanked me, but this is a family show.
Yeah. I mean, that's usually how it is. It's like, well, I got spanked sometime and it didn't hurt me. It's like, yeah, well, that was probably because the person who started the tradition in your family of spanking it was probably not a good parent to begin with. It was probably your great grandpa was a hopeless alcoholic or had some sort of mental issues, and he was just beating your grandparents for no apparent reason, and they grew up thinking, hey, that's what my dad did to me, so it must be okay.
The best sandwich, Fish Ron, peanut butter, jelly, and banana.
Yeah.
Give it a try. Great stuff.
I'm thinking bacon and mayonnaise.
Not a mayo guy.
Yeah.
Call yourself a southerner.
Sorry. I like pulled pork if that rehabilitates me.
Yeah.
Of course, I think you're on the whole hog side of the state there, Daniel.
Yeah, I'm on whole hog.
Everything but the squeal.
Reminds me.
Ironically, though, I think I've only ever had baby back in prime.
It's kind of like what David Chappelle said, because he's like, he was making a joke about food, and it's like, a lot of black people get offended when they say, oh, black people like eating fried chicken, watermelon, and Kool-Aid. You know what? I don't care. I love fried chicken, watermelon, and Kool-Aid. And personally, I think you're crazy if you don't like watermelon, fried chicken, and Kool-Aid.
So I never really got that because, I eat fried chicken and watermelon all the time. That's just what people around here eat. And it's like they equate being Southern with being black. And because like there's times where I'll just be exaggerating my Southern accent just to, kind of, make a point and, be a little bit hyperbolic. And they go, why are you imitating a black guy? It's like, what?
Oh, did you hear who was it? Idris Elba got crap recently for his character in something not being black enough because he didn't eat the right foods and didn't have enough.
I saw that one. That was dumb.
I missed that.
Yeah, I've actually heard, from one person who's like an actual historian on Southern America. He says, it's one thing that he really, really wishes, was a stereotype that would go away. The Smith that in the Deep South, if you were white, you were rich, privileged, and had everything. And if you were minority, you were piss poor and being oppressed. It's like, oh no, that's not true.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, especially in pre-Civil War, you know what the overwhelming majority of Southern people in the Confederacy were? They weren't these rich uppity slave owners. They were dirt poor farmers like almost everyone else.
Oh no, the water makes it good, Ethan. But yeah, fried chicken. KFC has gotten really, really bad.
Yeah.
What about Popeyes?
Popeyes is great. Bojangles isn't so bad, but Popeyes is better. But you know what I miss? I miss Roy Rogers. Do you remember those, Daniel? Did they I don't know how far around the country they were.
I don't remember the Roy Rogers.
Oh man, great chicken. And then Hardee's bought Roy Rogers. And so then they added fried chicken to their menu, and it was Roy Rogers. Okay, that's great. I can go to any Hardee's and get Roy Rogers fried chicken. Now they don't carry the fried chicken anymore. What happened to my Roy Rogers fried chicken?
Yeah, I know Hardee's.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like Popeyes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think Southerners get a lot of hate than they really need.
Yeah, it's like we're the one group that it's okay to be bigoted against.
Oh yeah, exactly. You know, it's like you can't say the N-word because that's offensive, and it has oppressive and racist origins. Well, so does the term redneck.
Yeah. Or honky or cracker or hillbilly or
Southerners don't quite have the power to shield from that like carpetbaggers.
Yeah.
Actually, there was one joke I also saw.
And the gold breakers.
I saw it on a TV show one time where some people go on a vacation to Georgia and they're like, wow, this is actually a pretty nice place. And the Georgians like, well, yeah, what'd you think it was? Well, I thought it was gonna be full of inbred neo-Confederate rednecks. And the guy was like, hey, that is an untrue stereotype. That's Mississippi, not Georgia. That's Mississippi.
Yeah, we don't have a Ralph's around here, SKN.
Yeah.
We also don't have Carl's Jr., even though they're owned by Hardee's now, I think, or Carl's Jr. owns Hardee's, the other way around. I don't know. We don't have those.
Well, it is owned by the same restaurant. I mean, the reason why it's called Carl's Jr. is because it's a quote unquote son of the original Hardee's.
Well, no, it was the son of Carl's restaurant. And Carl's restaurant, I think, was like a regular go in and sit down restaurant, and the fast food version of that is Carl's Jr. And then I don't know, they ended up being with Hardee's. I forget which one bought out the other.
Yeah.
We also don't have In-N-Out burgers here. I've heard those are really good.
Yeah.
We'll say one thing that always concerns me. You have these buffet restaurants. And they say, please eat all food on the premises. Yeah. And I'm just not sure enough for that kind of response, for that kind of commitment.
Yeah, I've heard some horror stories about. I've heard some horror stories about those all-you-can-eat restaurants.
It depends on the one you get to. Yeah. Golden Corral's pretty good.
Yeah, like.
I miss when I had a Pizza Inn nearby.
Yeah, there's people, like, you know, I've heard stories about people who, like, they just stuff themselves, they get sick, they go to the bathroom, then they come back out and they're like, yay, now I can eat more because I emptied my stomach. Five
Guys is great, but man, they are expensive.
Yeah, I've heard that. You know,
last time we got it, let's see, how many of the 1, 2, 3. And now this was for 6 of us. But, what was it, 5 or 6? I don't remember if my daughter was home or not. It was either 5 or 6 of us. We got 5 guys. $80.
Wow. Yeah, I know. I know. Out of curiosity, I looked at their menu, and it's like $5 for like a small milkshake. Yeah. I almost want to quote.
And $10 for a hamburger without any fries.
Yeah. I almost want to quote. You know, Pulp Fiction. It's like $5 for just a vanilla milkshake? You don't put bourbon in it? No. And then he's like, damn, that is one fucking good milkshake. Yeah, $5 well spent.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's good
then when I
food.
heard-
It is
when I
really
heard
good,
say
but it's really expensive.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah, I don't know about Red Robin. I don't think I've seen those.
Mm. Yeah, it kind of reminds me, of this documentary I saw, and it was about, various different places, and I saw, this one person, and I saw this one, and one of the stores they were bringing up was Whole Foods, and they were at a cash register with a customer, and the guy only had like a handful of products, like he probably only had like 10 items, and the guy was like, okay, that'll be 60 something dollars, and I'm like, $60 just for 10 items?
Hmm.
Yeah. And someone pointed that out in the comic section, and the number one response was, well, yeah, that's why in many places Whole Foods is nicknamed Whole Paycheck.
Yeah, but I mean, it's getting like that everywhere. I mean, it wasn't too long ago $60 would fill up the cart. Now $60 won't even fill up that top part where a baby can sit,
Of course, people attribute that to minimum wage rather than inflation, where the blame belongs.
Yeah.
Minimum wage causes an inflation of prices.
And it's even stupid that people don't know what inflation is. They're like, well, can't we just forcefully lower the prices? It's like, no, that's not how it works.
Doesn't work that way.
How do you lower prices? You make more products.
Yeah.
That's how you lower prices.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You increase supply. Yep.
Yeah.
Because prices, like inflation in a sort of like across the board prices is really just a ratio between the supply, the number of dollars in the circulation, and the amount of products. That's it.
Yeah, how many dollars chasing how many goods and services? Yeah.
So, like, if you want to, reduce the effects of inflation, either take money out of circulation or wait until more products are available on the market.
Yeah.
I think the best buffets are like the ones that aren't really chains, just like the family-owned red. We got one near here called Butcher Boys, which is really good, and it's not a chain or anything, but it's really good. But I mean, people don't get the idea of Southern buffets. They were like, well, how can you eat that much food? And it's like, it's not about the quantity. It's about getting what you want and being able to try a little bit of everything and not having to decide on like one thing, like, what am I hungry for today?
Yeah.
You get a little bit of one, a little bit of another.
Yeah, reminds me of a joke. Reminds me of a joke I saw about American meals versus European meals. In America, we order really big portions of food and eat it all in 5 minutes. And in Europe, they order microscopic portions of food and it takes them 5 hours to eat it.
Well, because a lot of, but like in Germany, like the coffee houses and things like that, those are social events. People just show up there and just kind of eat like birds, but they're talking with each other and chatting to each other.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's the thing, Americans, I think actually one person pointed out the reason is because, Americans, we eat to live, and Europeans live to eat. So, for them, mealtime isn't, oh, good, it's lunch break, I'm starving. It's more, oh, great, it's lunchtime. Now I can chat with my friends.
I mean, that's what it was like for me in middle school.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Daniel, did I ever speaking of school, did I ever tell you that prison joke that I heard one time? It's called, what's the difference between a maximum security prison and a US public school? The food's better and maximum security. And the shocking thing is that it
is interesting when you compare how much the architecture of a school is to a prison.
I still remember that story about the school that threw away a kid's lunch.
The kids what?
Threw away kids what? You cut out.
Lunch.
Why'd they throw away his lunch?
Oh, I think I've heard of that. Wasn't that because he had a peanut butter sandwich and the school had a very strict, oh, nope, this is an allergy-free zone, so no peanut butter products allowed.
No, it was because he didn't have enough balance on his account. Remember, Shane, we covered this.
That must have been a while back. I don't recall it off the top.
This
We
was-
covered a whole bunch of cafeteria nonsense back in the Michelle Obama days when she was fucking everything up.
Yeah. Yeah, parents are always obsessed. It's like, how nutritious is your kid's food? Is your kid's food nutritious? Is it good in that? It's like, but they're never asking the number one question. Why the heck does it taste like crap? Yeah. It's like, if it tastes like crap, it doesn't matter if it's nutritious or not. Kids are not going to eat it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's like the Michelle Obama thing was like, oh, well, we need to give them smaller lunches because obesity is a problem. What good do you think that's going to do? That's just going to leave them hungry. There were just so many days my son would come home and just want to pig out on everything because he hadn't really had much to eat since the morning, because they gave him so little to eat at lunch.
Yeah, I actually had a similar problem when I was going to high school because when I was in high school, I had severe obsessive compulsive disorder to the point where I did not want to eat anything when I was at school because I was afraid if I ate at school, I would get sick. So I would just skip lunchtime, and when I got home, I would just eat my weight in food, and I ended up getting fat for it just because of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's actually why, contrary to popular belief, fasting doesn't help you lose weight.
I am so
why does healthy food taste like cardboard? Unhealthy food tastes better. The things we were evolved to enjoy the taste of is basically sugar, fat, and salt. And the reason why is because they're really important for our metabolism, but traditionally back in hunter-gatherer days, they were really difficult to come by. And like if you had a sugar craving, that would cause you to be directed towards fruits and berries, that would have, and things like that. So,
yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, I mean, if I recall correctly, people always talk about how humans, have always eaten bread. Yeah, but not because it was good for us. It's because, in hunter-gatherer and early agriculture, and when we first adopted agriculture, bread was one of the few crops that was reliable,
Yeah, and hardy enough to keep,
to keep you going, but it's not. But it's not,
And yeah, that's the thing, Fish Ron, because the whole thing about GMOs are terrible for you. It's the opposite. Yeah. GMOs tend to be better for you because they can actually put back in the nutrition that isn't there anymore. I mean, like strawberries. Strawberries are one of the most nutritious things you can eat. They talk about like superfoods being acai berries, and acai berries are this superfood. Strawberries are actually better for you than acai berries. Yeah. Just saying.
Yeah, Shane. It kind of reminds me of like some of those.
Well, let me make my point. With wild strawberries, you usually only have a couple of weeks out of the year you can eat them. So over thousands of years, the cultivars have been made more hardy, so we can now get strawberries year round. So we get more nutrition from strawberries as a whole because we eat them throughout the year, but individually, the strawberries aren't as nutritious because the humans wanted them to be, bigger and tastier and redder, but they didn't really understand, what made them nutritious. So what the GMO strawberries are is they went to the wild strawberries and took out the genes that had been deactivated, that made the wild strawberries so much more nutritious and put them in the cultivars. And so, that's going to be one of the most nutritious things you can eat.
I'm reminded right now of me being Mr. Nostalgia over here. I'm now reminded of the Golden Rice story.
Golden
Rice.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I remember that one. Oh God, that was terrible.
Yeah.
That was one of the sagas that went on for like years that we covered on the podcast.
Yeah.
I think my coverage on that one was probably one of the first times on the show I lost my temper.
Yeah, I remember, hearing that people are like about how it's like, oh, it's destroying ecosystems, farmers are dying, they're committing suicide. And then there were some people that did their own investigation and they went over to those places and they mentioned that, and all the farmers are like, what the heck are you smoking? Yeah. You know what else really grinds my gears about, like, with Monsanto, is how people still blame them for Agent Orange. It's like people, they did not. First of all, it wasn't Monsanto that made Agent Orange. It was actually a different company that later became part of Monsanto. Second of all, it was actually a commercial herbicide. And two, when it was militarized, they warned the U.S. military, we don't know its effects on humans, and the military used it anyway.
JC, golden rice is rice that has been genetically modified to produce beta carotene. And it's a big boon, places like the Philippines where, you have kids going blind or even dying from vitamin A deficiencies. And yet, if you want to know why I call Greenpeace a terrorist organization, this is one big example. Look at what they were doing with golden rice in the Philippines and the horrible things they were doing to people and just the destructive and things they were doing to farmers that grew it.
Yeah, didn't the co-founder of Greenpeace later leave the organization because he discovered it went from being an actual environmentalist group to being an anti-capitalist pro-communist group.
Yep.
Yeah.
That seems like one of the first examples of basically what's happening to most companies today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know he was on Penn and Teller, and he said he left Greenpeace because they were getting more and more radical, and it's like we need to destroy capitalism and all that. We need to do this, and he's just like, guys, I just co-founded this organization to spread awareness. Why are you getting all radical?
Yeah. And you had people like, him and Norman Borlaug and people like that going like, no, if you want to solve these problems, you need more capitalism, not less.
I blame Ted Turner.
Nah, Captain Planet was a symptom, because I want to ask, I want to talk to the writers of Captain Planet, because it's like, okay, I want to meet, Loot and Plunder, and I want to ask him something. Mr. Plunder, how does destroying the environment give you money?
Yeah, exactly, Pierre. He says Greenpeace pushing anti-GMO, anti-nuclear propaganda for 30 years and blaming everyone else for not doing enough to stop world hunger and global warming. Whereas if we'd had, good fleets
they blame it on overpopulation, I mean,
yeah, but I mean, if we had good fleets of nuclear plants, pretty much. I mean, look at France, look at Germany. I'm getting stuttering.
I would
from
never
someone.
tell people to do this on principle, but I do. Yeah, you're staticking.
You're really staticking.
Okay, you guys were staticking to me. I don't know how it came through on the live stream.
Okay. But yeah, or even worse, or I was about to say, or even worse, they wonder why there's not enough food to go around, and they're like, I know what the reason is. We're overpopulated, and I would never tell this directly to a person, but and the thing I hate the most about the overpopulation people is I'm like, okay, if you think it's overpopulated, why don't you kill yourself? Now people are saying, well, that's mean to say. It's like, well, the point I'm trying to make is, well, if Earth is overpopulated, then who's got to go? Yeah, who's gonna go? You?
I mean, this reminds me of people who are on company board of directors. Like, you have this white guy on the board of directors. Like, we have too many white guys. We need to replace some of them. And it's like, okay, why don't we start with you?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, if we had a good fleet of nuclear plants, we basically have, global warming solved. I mean, even without GMOs, we produce enough food it's socialism that's causing the food problems.
Yeah.
Not any real, problems with food production.
It also reminds me of those like communist people that pull a McNamara fallacy because they're like Jeff Bezos has this amount of money. Did you know that if he properly distributed that every single person on this planet could have could have a nice apartment and three meals a day, for at least a year. To which I want to say, yeah, and how are you gonna take all that money and spread it around, and how are you gonna keep it going? It doesn't work that way, people.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, it's 10 o'clock, so we gotta be.
Yeah, the wife's gonna come home soon, and
Yep.
Wait,
So,
are you
any of
married?
you guys got?
Wait, are you married, Chris?
no, I'm not.
He was talking about my wife.
Yeah, I'm not.
This is
married.
why we have the 10 o'clock limit, because
Yeah.
they've actually
Yeah,
been working her over. It's just terrible what they're doing to her.
I mean, I'm courting a girl right now, but I don't know if it's. We don't know yet, so.
Yeah,
I'm not married.
Courting's good.
I was-
a long courtship is a good idea.
I was about to ask about your status lately because I haven't heard in a while, and yeah, it has changed.
How about yours, Daniel?
Still, my girlfriend's ways out north these days. I barely hear from her, unfortunately.
Funny thing about courting, though, Shane, I'll say this real quickly. It reminds me of of all these, PSAs about, sexual harassment in the workplace and all that. And they talk about, how you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't say this to a girl and all that, you shouldn't do that. And like the comment section was full of old people saying, back in my day, what we called a person that kept asking you out to dinner? We called that courting.
Yeah. Well, it used to be, the whole sexual harassment in the workplace. It was about, a boss doing that with an underling. That was all it was about originally. It wasn't about like two coworkers, a coworker asking another for a date or whatever.
Yeah. Plot twist. These are actually a bunch of crypto antinatalists.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like you said, Shane, it wasn't about that one coworker. It wasn't about that one coworker who kept asking you for a date, and every day you said no. It was about the boss that said, okay, lady, I'll give you a raise, but you gotta spend your lunch break in my office, if you know what I mean, like that.
Or she turns him down for a date, and then she doesn't get a raise as a result, or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, Chris, you'll know what I'm doing here in a second. Just I need you to roll with me on this.
What?
Come on, we're talking about your job here.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was watching a video, with Michael Caine, Alan Arkin, and Morgan Freeman, and they were talking about their life, and Michael Caine was talking about how he met his wife Shakira, and I'm just thinking, yeah, he would never get away with that today because he'd be branded a sexual predator.
Actually, this reminds me of College Humor video, back when College Humor was decent. It's the same love story, old versus young. Where this old lady is telling this story and it's all romantic, but then the younger girl is telling the story. And it's like, okay, this guy's creepy,
Yeah.
Yeah, SKM, she'd smack you in the old days. Yes, this idea that, back in the days of the patriarchy, the women were helpless and couldn't do anything. No. They'd smack you a good one.
And this brings us full circle back to Pepe Le Pew.
Well, I was about to.
Well, and the honeymooners too. I mean, look at how many people try and portray Ralph Cramden as a wife beater.
Yeah,
he never laid a hand on her except to give her a hug.
Yeah, and not to mention, if I recall correctly, Jackie Gleason's character, yes, he would often threaten to smack his wife, but she would also threaten to smack him back.
Oh yeah, she wasn't the least bit. She just get in his face and go, shut up, because she knew it was an empty threat. And he threatened Norton that way too, you know. So.
Yeah. And here's another fun fact to show just how strong women are. You know Al Capone. You know how he got the nickname Scarface? Guess where he got the scar from? He got it because he got into a fight with a woman and her brother because he walked up to a girl and said, "Man, sweet cheeks, you've got the sweetest ass I've ever seen." She smacked him. Her brother came over and said, "Hey, dude, what's going on?" She said, he was hitting on me and I didn't like it. So he's like, "Why are you hitting on my sister?" And they got into a fight. Yeah. And he lost. It was such a big dent to his pride that he would always tell people, "Oh yeah, I got it from fighting in World War I." But those that were personal friends of him knew that's not the reason. That was just an excuse he made to make himself sound better.
Yeah. All right. Any other parting shots before we
No.
go for the evening?
Not really.
Pip, are you still there? You've been quiet a while.
Yeah, I was
He fell asleep.
talking about Doctor Who, and I don't watch Doctor Who that much.
Yeah.
Oh, we haven't
So
talked about that in half an hour. So.
Yeah.
You got any parting shots before we go?
Not really.
Okay.
Other than that, birdies are cool.
All right.
Other
Well,
animals are
thanks
cool.
everyone. If you want
Usually not the
keep...
ones that most people obsess over.
Well, thanks everyone. If you want to keep this channel going, donate.bugosity.tv for all sorts of ways. And above all, keep watching. Comments for the Common God, shares for the Share Throne, like, subscribe, the bell, and just share this around everywhere. Thank you, everyone. Until next time, stay strong.